Okay, we have a couple of ideas that I've put up on this board to share with you what currently is being taught and what we recommend. So, pretty straightforward. You can see it. All right, got my A's hat on. I'm a baseball fan. Didn't want you to have to stare at my bald noggin this particular video. Okay, so pretty straightforward. We hear coaches say move your feet all the time, and frankly I never really understood what that meant. I kind of wish that we wouldn't say that to our athletes. It used to really, really frustrate me because I didn't know what that meant. I mean, I kept looking at my feet like I'm moving them. I don't know what you want. Anyway, control your core is a real, honest to goodness piece of advice that all athletes need, all volleyball athletes at least, need to be reminded of all the time. So that's a good swap. We talked about facing the target. No, we're going to face the ball from now on. Platform, meaning straight elbows. Bend your elbows, curl the ball. Shuffling, no. First step accuracy is far more important. And we hit on that in the second video, second set of instructionals. First step accuracy is how you can tell if your athletes have good core control. Diving and rolling are going to be substituted by just run through the ball. We're going to get rid of reading. Instead, we want to tell our athletes to move with certainty. And we're going to stop worrying so much about the hard-driven balls. And we want to instead start focusing on getting the easy ones first. All right, that's a little bit of good background there. One of the things, too, I wanted to mention that before we go. Let me get this out of the way. Sorry. Is this idea about the about the pokey or the knuckly or something. When I played on the beach a lot, I used to do this. I guess you could call it the tomahawk. I don't know. A lot of players did a pokey or whatever. But when I started learning how to have a really good positive back step, bam, I never did this anymore. So in the context of how to contact the ball, it's certainly reasonable to learn a pokey. Like that could always come in handy. But for the most part, if we can learn to have good core control and have a good first back step for the balls over our head, we are never going to need to do this again. Once I started to be able to step backwards, that was it. Never had to do that again. I guess maybe once in a while, as a blocker on a down ball, if that I might be pretty close to net and the play happens really fast. You're right there, you're maybe within 5 feet of the net and some kind of a weird shot off of a down ball. Maybe I poked it up. But almost never. I think I can remember doing that maybe once. I'm not even sure. So there's a little bit of insight. Feel free to practice the pokey if you want, but ideally you should never use it. All right. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about where these sets of videos have come from. A little bit about my background. So I played, as I've occasionally mentioned, perhaps you've picked it up. I started in the 70s. I lived in Southern California, and I just took every advantage of being in kind of the hotbed of volleyball. Played pretty much every weekend, everywhere, anywhere I could. And I don't want to get too deep into my background, but just please understand, I've played for perhaps 25 years at, indoor, outdoor, co-ed, national team. I mean, not national team, but and outdoors, played in single, double, and AAA tournaments for years and years and years. And unfortunately, I didn't know as much as I do now, or I might have had a little more success then. But at some point, after too many injuries, I stopped playing. And that's really given me a really interesting perspective on the game and has I think largely spurred these sets of videos is by stepping away from the game and starting to look at it more as a fan and starting to see the game in a different way. And as well, I started dancing a lot, which was a great shaper, perhaps, especially of the second set of videos on acceleration. A great deal of that video I pulled from the dance floor and sort of transitioned or had that evolve into helping athletes on the volleyball floor. So that's a little bit about my background. 25 years playing volleyball, about almost 15 years as a dancer, and kind of combined them. And I hope you've enjoyed these videos. I know that this is innovative, different, unique way to look at the game from the defensive end. I hope you can appreciate that this has been a tremendous amount of work to put this together. I only say this because I recognize that this is a very different look at the game. And as I've mentioned earlier, this is not by any stretch of the imagination a whimsical kind of a video. And finally, I want to thank a couple of people who have really helped make this happen for me. First would be Mike D'Alessandro. He was the first person I ever saw who recognized how important it was to take away that cut shot on the beach. And his insight has been a great help. The next would be Danny Hammer, who was probably the closest to an artist I ever saw on the volleyball court. He did and has done things that no one has ever done since. Most creative player I've ever seen. And he was the first one I ever noticed that was messing around with passing with bent arms. And he's a great passer. So that spurred some of my imagination watching him play and practice. Next would be Mr. Doug Stone. And he's the steadiest guy I've ever seen play. And he's the first one I ever saw who dig with open hand. Pop that ball up. Learn how to make a one-handed dig, one-handed play. Even on softer or not a hard-driven ball, he was the first I ever saw to just pop it up. And that has been a big influence, obviously, on a lot of this discussion. I want to thank Juliana Dixon, who has been a mentor of mine on the dance floor and always encouraged me to kind of find my own voice, if I could use that analogy, on the dance floor. And was very helpful in the second video on core control. But above them all, I want to mention Fred Cloyd, who, in my opinion, is the single smartest volleyball mind I've ever met. And although he's currently not involved in volleyball, he lives in San Francisco. And if anybody out there has a club team and you want to win some games, find Fred Cloyd. He knows the game like nobody. And I guess that's about it. This is Kurt Schasker at Next Generation Volleyball. One last thing now that I think of it. I've mentioned that I was going to add some video clips, and I decided I'm not going to do that because I think it would just devolve into volleyball follies, and I don't want to start picking on any one individual person or team or coach or program. I think that's just not fair. There's not that much money in volleyball. It's not fair to start picking on people who are just trying to improve the lives of their athletes. It's just not fair. So I have been, as you can perhaps guess, I've been vigorously critical of the world of volleyball on occasion in these videos. But that does not mean I am in any way critical of any one individual or anybody who's put videos out on defense. My hat's off to you. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your knowledge. Obviously, I'm going to be in great disagreement with a great number of videos out there on defense. So be it. That does not mean that I have the utmost respect for your efforts. I guess that's it. Thank you very kindly.